This is Valley News Live at noon.
We start with a story that's new at noon. Grand Forks police have arrested a woman they say was attempting to kill her own mother. It happened just before 1 this morning in the 800 block of 18th Avenue South. Police say 28-year-old Jenna Weinrowicz was upset with her 61-year-old mother who tried to walk away from an argument and go outside. Police say the daughter followed her and assaulted her with an edged weapon. The mother was taken to a local hospital for non-life-threatening injuries. Weinrowicz was arrested on charges of attempted murder, aggravated assault, and interfering with a telephone call during an emergency. Also new at noon, authorities are calling it a planned and proactive operation. But it had some in South Fargo wondering why there was a helicopter circling their neighborhood. It started between 5:30 and 6:30 a.m. at 6th Street and 9th Avenue. Officials say the Fargo Police Department partnered with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration for the operation. One viewer living nearby told Valley News Live they heard 2 flashbangs and there were several canine units. Officers were clearing out when our reporter got on scene, and Fargo PD says the operation is complete. We have a message in to the DEA for more information about what happened. An I-94 on-ramp on the east side of Moorhead just reopened after being closed for more than an hour this morning. It happened at Highway 336 after a semi-crash. The State Patrol says no injuries have been reported, but crews were on scene for quite a while to clean up the mess. And let's check in with meteorologist Lisa Green.
Well, good afternoon. We've got some chilly weather here today. Clouds have actually moved in for Fargo Moorhead as well as the Northern Valley. They've been creeping a little farther west and to the south as well. And we've been seeing some showers in places. Fargo's at 58 degrees. It's 54 in Grand Forks. We're looking at some rain being reported at the airport there. Meanwhile, some of our western communities still enjoying some sunshine. It's 57 in Jamestown. Here's a look at what's causing all of this. We've got some wind rushing in, gusts into the 30s, a 31-mile-per-hour gust in Fargo, and 36 in Jamestown. So winds are really whipping around here, and it's driving in that cooler air and also some of these clouds making their way through. You can see some showers in and around Grand Forks and into parts of northwest Minnesota. Once this clears tonight, we're talking the potential for some frost. So we want to give you a heads up. We're looking at the clearing skies, the wind easing up overnight. That'll allow our temperatures to drop pretty quickly, perhaps down into the mid-30s for some, and that could lead to frost. So if you still have your gardens going here, you may want to take some measures to protect your plants, bring in your potted flowers, and maybe do a little harvesting of some things that are still hanging out in your garden just to be safe. We're going to talk more about this and when maybe we'll see a warm-up coming our way here in the forecast in just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lisa. Police and schools have been on high alert across Minnesota this morning after a string of active shooter reports. So far, we're hearing about reports in Cloquet, Rochester, and Mankato. In Rochester, the call about an active shooter in the school came in just after 10 a.m. They did not find any evidence of a shooting or injuries. A similar threat came in at Mankato West High School, but law enforcement said there was not an active shooter. In Cloquet, the middle and high schools were on lockdown this morning as well. Stick with Valley News Live throughout the day as we continue to follow this developing story. A former Minneapolis police officer who struck a deal to plead guilty to a state charge of aiding and abetting second-degree manslaughter in the death of George Floyd was sentenced to 36 months behind bars this morning. Thomas Lane is already serving a 2.5-year federal sentencing for violating Floyd's civil rights. On the state side, prosecutors in Lane's defense team agreed to a recommended sentence of 3 years. Lane will serve the state sentence at the same time as his federal sentence and do it in a federal facility. President Biden addressed the United Nations General Assembly this morning, where he emphasized the challenges the world is facing, particularly the war in Ukraine. As Michael George reports, ahead of the president's speech, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced he is stepping up his war efforts.
United Nations General Assembly, President Biden called on the world to stand up to Russia for its invasion of Ukraine.
This world should see these outrageous acts for what they are. This war is about extinguishing Ukraine's right to exist as a state.
The president also stressed the importance of the UN at a time when Russia and China, two permanent members of the Security Council, seem to be at odds with the organization's core principles.
A permanent member of the United Nations Security Council invaded its neighbor, attempted to erase a sovereign state from the map.
Ahead of the president's speech, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced he's calling up 300,000 military reservists to active duty. It follows a number of setbacks for Russian forces in Ukraine. Putin also warned the West that Russia still has weapons of mass destruction and is prepared to use them. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky will also address the assembly today, but not here in person. He was the only world leader given permission to do so virtually, despite Russia's objections. Moscow is also organizing votes this week in some of the occupied territories in eastern Ukraine to become part of Russia. Foreign leaders have denounced them as sham referendums. Michael George, CBS News, the United Nations.
President Biden also announced nearly $3 billion in global food security aid to address shortages caused in part by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Well, mark your calendars. Living Hope Baptist Church is sponsoring a gas buy-down event this Saturday from 10 a.m. until noon at the PetroServe USA on Main Avenue West in West Fargo. Gas will be discounted $1.25 lower than the listed price. Church members will also offer free window washes, tire checks, and gift bags. Coming up at noon, some big names in country music and the people who literally put words in their mouth. We'll take you to the Nashville Songwriter Awards. But next, Lisa is back with your weather to plan your Wednesday.